Now, the aquaponics system works on a principle that is known as the nitrogen cycle, right? Now, the way this nitrogen cycle works, right, it first starts off by you, the owner of the system, feeding the fish with fish feed, right? Now, the fish consumes this fish feed, right, and then absorbs the protein into its body so that it grows bigger, right? And then it releases in waste form, right? Something known as ammonia, right? And ammonium. The chemical formulas of these two substances are with ammonia, it's NH3, and with ammonium, it's NH4 with a positive charge, right? Now, this ammonia and ammonium, right, basically interact with a bacteria that is within the system that is known as a nitrosomonas, right, bacteria, right? This bacteria fundamentally oxidizes the ammonia and the ammonium, right, into something simpler called a nitrite, right, which is fundamentally NO2, right? Now, this nitrite, right, interacts with another type of bacteria within the aquaponic system that is known as a nitrobacter, right? Now, the nitrobacter basically oxidizes the nitrite, right, and turns it into a nitrate, right? When we speak of a nitrate, we are speaking of NO3 with a negative charge of 2, right? And once we have this nitrate is fundamentally the food that the plant consumes, the plants that are fundamentally in the grow bed of the system. Now, the aquaponics has about 6 components that actually make up the system, right? Number one, it is the fish tank, right? This is where the fish are bred, this is where the fish grow, and this is where the fish are harvested when they are ready for market, right? Number two, you have something called a solid waste remover, right? Now, we can create our own solid waste remover, right? In the form of you just putting a number of different size rocks and stones, right, in a bucket like system, right? So you take a big bucket, you put in different size stones, right? These stones can range from being pebbles and stones that you actually use for construction, right? To create gravel, right? That type of stone. So you can take different diameter size stones and rocks and then put it into a system or into a bucket like a container, right? And then make sure that you connect where the waste of the fish tank goes, you connect it right at the bottom of this bucket, right? And then when this bucket fills from the bottom, all solid wastes, right, in the form of yes, solid waste from from feces from the fish, right? Yes, it tends to be stopped, right, and blocked by the rocks as the water levels goes up within the bucket that is filled with different size stones that have different diameters and textures. Number two, the third component, I mean, that you find in the system is known as a biofilter, right? Now, this biofilter is fundamentally the way you would create it, right, in the hood, right, in Soweto, like ghetto ghetto style, right? You would actually take different size sacks, right? A sack, right? You know when you buy oranges in South Africa in Soweto, right? They come in something called a sack. it's red, right? Now you find different types of sacks with different types of sizes, right? So you can take a number of these sacks and put them into one sack, right? And then form this filter like object, right? Which you allow the water that comes from the solid waste remover, right? It must also pass through this biofilter, right? To actually clean up or simplify or break down the waste which actually comes from the solid waste remover. Yes, the fourth component in the aquaponics system that you can find there is basically known as a grow bed, right? This is where you actually put your grow medium, right? And actually grow your plants, your different vegetables, specifically leafy greens if you're a starter, right? You have to put them into a grow bed, right? So I would say that this is the fourth component that you can find in the aquaponics system. Now, the fifth component that you find in an aquaponics system is known as the sump or the reservoir, right? Now, in order for you to be able to balance a system that has this much water, right, you need to have a number of components, and one of them that is very important is the sump. This is where all the water actually flows to. And this is where you can actually put your pump, I would say, right, to actually pump the water in order for them to go in a cyclic form around the system. And a something called a siphon, right? A siphon is a bent tube, right, through which you can pull up a liquid, right, by means of air pressure, right? Pull it up and then down to a tank of which is at a lower level than the tank that the siphon is connected to, right? So and I forgot another very important component. It's basically two of them. It is the water pump to allow the water to cycle around the system, right? And air pump. Air pump makes sure that there's enough oxygen within the system so that the fish are able to survive and grow in a very healthy environment. For beginners, right? People who are beginners in using the aquaponics system, right? I would like to suggest the type of crops and the type of fish that you must focus on, right? Now, as a beginner, right, you must focus, the type of plants that you must focus on are basically leafy greens, any type of leafy greens, be it spinach, be it lettuce, it can be mint, it can be kale, right? It can be mustard, right? It can be different types of leafy greens, right? As a beginner. And as you develop your skill of working with the aquaponics system, then I would suggest, what can I say, plants that bear, what can I say, fruit like strawberries. You can look at growing peppers, right? Green, red, and whatever color. You can look at growing things like cucumbers in the system, right? But this is comes when you actually tend to understand the system more, how to balance the pH, how to make sure that the minerals that you need to grow your plants are all there and things like that. But anything that grows above ground can be grown within this system, right? I have seen systems that have plants or vegetation or crop that you grow underground like potatoes, but that's for advanced aquaponics users and advanced growers of crops, right? Now, when it comes to the type of fish or aquatic animals that you should focus on, Now, as a grower in Soweto, now looking at the temperature and the conditions of Soweto, right? I would suggest that you focus on something called a tilapia fish, specifically a Mozambican tilapia, right? And a catfish, right? Now, I have come to understand that these two specific type of fish, right, can basically be grown within the type of climate that Soweto has to offer, right? And the two fish don't necessarily compete for food because the catfish, I would say it's a bottom feeder, right? It feeds on the feed that ends up at the bottom parts of the tank, of the fish tank. And then the Mozambican tilapia, you can actually use it for, it actually it catches the food before it actually reaches a certain depth of the water. So I would suggest tilapia, Mozambican based, catfish, right? And leafy greens as a beginner of this aquaponics system.